Welcome back to another Big News Wednesday. And in fact, I think it is, because we have the Philadelphia rally that announced the, debut of the Harris-Walz ticket. It was exciting, it was fun. The right is crying about it and trying to figure out what they're supposed to do about Tim Walz. And we're gonna dive into all that and more with me and with Sharon Reed. Sharon, how's it going?
Hey, how are you? You still eating some granola?
I'm not still eating, I had a granola bar.
I'm sorry.
Before the show, and nobody needed to know, but now that's the big news of the day.
I don't know why I have such a big mouth, sorry.
Sharon doesn't eat breakfast, okay? She doesn't need sustenance like some of us mere mortals. But anyway, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. And for all of you at home, thank you for being here. You chose a great day to tune in because we have some Tim Walz for you. It's gonna be a lot of fun. He's making fun of JD Vance, which that should be the national holiday at this point. But beside that, we also have to dive into a variety of different ways that the right is trying to attack Tim Walz. And it's flailing and it's random and it's conspiratorial, and we're gonna rebut and fact check a whole lot of it, which will be fun. We also have some election results from yesterday. We have a positive one and we have a not so positive one. So a little bit of mixed news there and a whole lot more besides. All that's just in the first hour. Coming up in the aftermath, what is Kamabla? We're gonna try to figure it out. Okay, I have a suspicion, but we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. And Elon Musk, noted warrior, crusader for free speech, wants to sue companies that didn't advertise on his platform that he ruined. So that's gonna be fun too. Lots to get to. Hit the like button if you haven't already. You can also send us your comments or tweets, your super chats, and we'll give you, one of you, a $100 Blue Apron gift card. So with all that said, you ready to jump into things?
I am so ready.
Okay, let's do it. We're gonna talk Philly, starting with this.
Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on. That's not what middle America is. And I gotta tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
How is he a human? How is he not a cartoon character and possibly a Muppet? Maybe I've just been watching a lot of Muppets recently, but Tim Walz is giving off funny Muppet energy. That was a great joke. I loved in the background, Kamala Harris just sort of like smiling, like a little bit like, oh, was he gonna go there? And then he, in classic dad fashion, had to point out that he had made the joke. It's just a genetic thing. At a certain point, you have to do that. And so he did it, and all the emoting, everything is awesome. So that is Tim Walz. And you should know that that joke that a lot of people there in Philly laughed at, a lot of people online laughed at it, is making the right very angry, okay? And I actually saw an article, Sharon, I want your opinion on this. I saw an article, I think it was on Mediaite, and it was like, Tim Walz shouldn't be given a pass for trafficking in this conspiracy theory. And I just don't know what we're doing as a society anymore. I understand the desire to both sides literally everything, as the right is talking about Kamala became a black person. Okay, you've got some conspiracy theories, I guess the left does too. Nobody believes it, nobody thinks it's real. It's not a conspiracy theory because it's not a theory and there's no conspiracy. It's a joke. That's all it is. That's why it's funny. That's why people laugh. I think, Sharon, what do you think?
I think you're spot on. It's just kind of what we're doing. It's almost like a blah, 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 blah. Like, I think there was an SNL skit like that, where you're not really saying anything. You're just kind of talking mashed potato nonsense. I don't even know if that's a thing, but it's just kind of like, you're just kind of mixing stuff up and seeing, well, how people will react to it. Maybe they'll say, oh, that tasted good. That was fun for a minute, but I don't want to consume it every day. It's something like that. I don't even know if I made sense, but neither do they.
Yeah, I just, look, again, we've talked about this multiple times. It's just funny, that's all it is. JD Vance is a weird guy, and it is plausible that he would have done that, particularly because he wrote the book where he was describing he had this wild younger life or whatever before he became the most like stock standard Silicon Valley sociopath that has ever walked the earth. And so it's conceivable that he could have done it, but nobody believes that he actually did. It's just a joke. Please, everyone, stop trying to drain all of the joy out of this time. We're finally enjoying ourselves. Just let us enjoy ourselves. But anyway, that wasn't the only joke that he had, and not just on the stage at the rally. He also put out this message on Twitter. The best part about being the VP candidate for the Dems is that my running mate will never try to have me hung by a crowd of her own supporters. Done, because they tried to kill Mike Pence. But it is funny, I like dark humor, and Tim Walz likes dark humor. He's very much a dad in that way too. But anyway, look, it's been an exciting time, and we'll get to more of the substance from Walz, but let's just talk about what's happened since he was chosen. It was just a day ago. It feels like several weeks now, but apparently since he was announced as the running mate, the Harris campaign has raised more than $20 million from supporters, which is great numbers, although we can't say for sure that that is due to Walz because they were raising a lot of money anyway. I'm sure it helped. It was one of its best fundraising days this election cycle. By the way, during his speech, Walz told rally supporters that in this less than 100-day campaign that they have time for now, we'll sleep when we're dead. And I think that that very much has to be the mantra. I think both of them should not stop traveling between now and the election. Joe Biden will be fine. He'll take care of all the presidential stuff. Harris, you can just go out there, be in Michigan, be in Arizona, be in Georgia, go to North Carolina, go to all those places, go to New Hampshire. And I hope that they do that. But anyway, we're gonna get, as I said, we're gonna get to the substance, but I think it's exciting. We have not yet gotten your a chance for you to respond to the pick. I don't know if you had a favorite, but what do you think about the direction that Kamala Harris went in?
Well, I told you I had that interview with Josh Shapiro, and I wasn't really thinking about him before that. Not that long ago, maybe late last year, early this year, it all blends together. And I thought, well, he is, I get it. He is either so good and an Academy Award winner, or the guy's the real deal. And I said back then, oh, he does sound like Obama. This is, well, I don't want to use weird, that's already taken. But I said, I thought it should be him. And he's young, and look at this hot, fresh ticket. But I didn't know much about Walz, okay? I'm a journalist who didn't do enough homework. I like him, and I think this is just right. She has her Obama to Biden, okay? Kamala to Walz is the same thing, and he's comfortable, he's believable, he likes people, he helps people. I was reading an article about how when he was a coach, one of his kids, he protected a gay kid who was getting bullied. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying he deserves a gold star for that, but he's a good guy. And I think it showed time and time again when you look at his life story. And I think Americans can relate to that. A teacher, a coach, he served. He dissed the NRA after a while and said, I'm not gonna put up with this. Oh, women should have, autonomy over their bodies. What's not to like about this guy? I was just kind of thinking, I'd love to have dinner with him, or invite him to the cookout, or just spend a few minutes with him. Maybe I'm drinking.
I think for a lot of people, he reminds people of like their uncle, or maybe in some cases dad, or their teacher. He just has that familiarity that JD Vance, like unfortunately, Peter Thiel cannot manufacture that sort of warmth and just ship it to Vance to use. Vance has no warmth or charisma or like just humanity at the end of the day, and Walz does. But as I said, I do want to get into the substance. So let's jump into, here is some of what Tim Walz chose to focus on. Great lines in his debut with Harris in Philadelphia.
Some of us are old enough to remember when it was Republicans who were talking about freedom. It turns out now what they meant was the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
Yeah, I love that. I saw it in the background. Harris loved it too. It's a great line. And I'm glad that he's focusing on it. I think it's consistent with the weird stuff that he kickstarted in this campaign. And by the way, look, it's a thing that a lot of people have brought up as a counter to the right, but I do think it should be one of the central sort of narratives of this. The right spent a few years saying the left is, they're Karens, they're censorious, they're too interested in what you're doing. That was a lie when they said it, and they've proven the lie over the past 5 years as they have become more and more, quite literally, intimately obsessed with what's going on in your bedroom, in your bathroom, in your pants, inside of your body. They apparently have no home life, no internal life, no hobbies, but they're very interested in what you and your family and your young kids have got going on. And I love that he's focusing on that. And apparently it's part of the strategy that Harris is gonna use him to attack the MAGA movement, calling him the sledgehammer. So according to multiple sources on and close to the campaign, the vice president allies are planning to deploy Walz over the next 3 months in the media and on the campaign trail as an omnipresent MAGA trashing attack dog, which I love. I want a stuffed animal of that. Walz is set to be, in the phrasing of one source, the campaign's go-to sledgehammer against Vance and Trump from now until election day. And I think that she can do some of that too, but this is sort of a classic thing where you make him the guy that's really attacking them a ton, and then she can focus on laying out her agenda and seem a little bit less, in the muck and all that. And I think he's obviously good at it in that he got people to start talking about how creepy and weird they are. We can bring up one example of that, just weird as hell. He's got a lot of people saying that, but also some other good specific attacks against Donald Trump. Take a look at this.
He froze in the face of the COVID crisis. He drove our economy into the ground. And make no mistake, violent crime was up under Donald Trump. That's not even counting the crimes he committed.
Yeah, I like that too. It's just that little little daddy thing that he added to it. And again, the right is trying to totally rewrite the history of Donald Trump. They want to run on the state of the economy and crime and immigration 2 years ago. That's what they're going to try to hang around the neck of Joe Biden. All the improvements that have happened since then, we're going to ignore. We're also going to ignore the year 2020. It didn't exist. Everybody remember the 3 years that Donald Trump was president? First of all, there were tons of problems during that time, but that's what they're going to do. And we need someone who's effective at fighting back against it. Sharon, what do you make of all that?
Yeah, listen, he did what he did, and he is who he is. I heard one commentator this morning refer to Trump as in his fat Elvis stage, and he is. He's rambling on Truth Social and just saying, just incoherent things. There's something off. The right is behaving like Miss Hannigan, okay, inspecting the floor again, harassing Annie and the orphans. And we just want to live, get back some of the ground we lost because of the rogue Supreme Court and the like. And we're kind of over it. You jumped the shark. So I think that Walz and his attack way of kind of just making it real simple. You're weird, dude, okay? Leave us be, let us have our own thing, stay out of our womb. It's just perfect. It's just plain spoken, and you don't have to do this highbrow. Why would we analyze Donald Trump and what he's doing? It doesn't even require that. He's just a bombastic fool at this point. And yes, evil can be done through the people who are propping him up in this way and using his narcissism. But I think if we just follow what Walz said, it's simple, weird.
Yep, 100% weird. And I love the response. Just mind your business. I think that just needs to be a much bigger part of this. Okay, well, that said, that's a little taste of Walz there, and we'll obviously have more of that. But we need to turn now to the attempt to reclaim the narrative, reclaim the state of the race before we have these new candidates. And so we're going to turn to this right now. The right would have you believe that they are super happy that Kamala Harris chose Tim Walz as the VP pick, but their flailing and deranged attempts to attack him, I think, tell a very different story. Take a look at how ahead of themselves they're getting in their attempt to pitch him as some sort of apocalyptic threat.
He is the biggest booster in the whole country for unlimited refugee resettlement. That means under the Harris-Walz plan, they're going to turn the entire Midwest into Mogadishu. That's their plan, that's their policy. I don't think there's a market for that in the United States of America.
Yeah, that's obviously ridiculous, but I love that he's being honest. The greatest nightmare scenario that he can think of is, I'm living in Africa. Like that's literally who he is. This guy likes refugees. Ugh, why does he like them? And he wants to turn us into Mogadishu. I don't know, like a totally unregulated economy. It sounds more like what you're interested in producing, but I know that he's going for the racist angle there. And so the attacks are, they have no basis, no bearing on who Tim Walz actually is. And at the same time, they're very mad about the fact that the rally in Philly went well and people seem super jazzed about the pick. Here's a little video, just a small segment of Ben Shapiro responding to the fact that everyone at the rally was just having a good time and enjoying Walz. Here's him trying to process those feelings.
It's that if you go back far enough, he was a high school football coach. And don't you know, he's a teacher and a high school football. He's basically Mr. Feeney, but more athletic. He's like Ed Asner, avuncular, moderate, just one of the boys. You know, a guy who can crack a beer and can shoot a rifle, but is also really, really in favor of gun control and transing the kids. That's basically the pitch in favor of Tim Walz. So she does this routine. These rallies are incredibly well choreographed. I will say that. They are very well choreographed. She calls for a chant, and a chant goes up. First Democratic rally I've seen for a while where people start actually cheering USA. And why are they cheering USA? Because she says, what an amazing country this is. What an incredible country where a person like me, middle-class person, or Tim Walz, middle-class person, can become the president and vice president of the United States. Now, I agree with that, but she doesn't agree with that. She believes that America is systemically racist. So does Tim Walz.
Okay, so he's obviously very worked up and he's getting ahead of himself. I don't know if he looks a little bit like he might have been crying. I don't know for sure if that's the case or if he's been partying with Don Jr. It's one of those two things because he's even more high energy than usual. It bothers him so much that people were, look, when there was a chant, he's like, it's well choreographed. It was just a chant. Like she started it and they continued it. That's enthusiasm. That's not like a playbook or something. I'm sorry, dude. That's just people being happy. And that they chanted USA, USA. Oh God, it hurts him so bad. And she's like, no, but she doesn't believe that because she referenced structural racism. Yeah, no, it's true. That totally was the case. There are still people that love other elements of America other than the fact that it's been fundamentally racist for a really long time. I know that bothers you. And then when he's going through Walz's biography, he just says all of those things. And you expect that he's gonna like turn it around, and he tries to with referencing he's super for gun control. He did background checks, which like 80% of Republicans agree with. He did red flag laws. So, you know, like boyfriends don't shoot and kill their girlfriends. Like these are not wild things. He's not taking your guns away. Walz actually uses guns. Ben Shapiro, is there ever any evidence that he's held a gun literally his entire life? He's supposed to pretend that he loves guns because he wants a right-wing audience. Walz uses guns and also thinks that there should be gun violence regulations. And so he did those things. And of course he throws out that he wants to trans your kids because remember, Ben Shapiro, despite being sold to us as some sort of intellectual gladiator, is an insane person who is so obsessed with the trans community that he thinks people can be turned trans against their will. It's just an updated version of they used to say that you could be turned gay against your will by like seeing a kiss in a movie or something like that. These are deeply insecure people with some weird concerns about what could happen to them if they listen to the wrong commercial or something. But anyway, it's gonna get even weirder and we will get to that, Sharon. But what do you think about those little examples?
I'm worried about them. I'm worried about Stephen Miller and Ben Shapiro. They both, and I don't know, I was kind of seeing if I could adjust my screen, but they both like, Stephen Miller looked like he had this grayness over him. Like they're unwell. Both of them are having some kind of physical ailment. At least that's how it looked, in my opinion, to me, because it's very hard to vilify this guy Walz. He's just a regular guy who says, may not be my choice, but again, you said it, mind your business. I just support my neighbors if I can compromise without compromising my own values and integrity. That's what I try to do. It's just, I don't know what they're going to do to try to put him in a box. I know they're attacking his status, his military service, which is a joke. You're gonna swift boat him? Okay, that's not gonna work. And besides, there's less than 100 days to go. So I think he's gonna pick up traction, but you never know.
Yeah, we don't know for sure. And it just, as he was going through the thing, he's avuncular. He does stuff with guns and all. Like they just hate that he's a regular guy. It bothers them so much. And then you look at, again, the right is always talking about like traditional masculinity. Like other people would call it different things, but that's what they would call it. And then look at those two dudes. Ben Shapiro, to prove how manly he was, you remember, an audience member reminded me of this. He went to Home Depot and he bought a single piece of wood and then held it as if he was building something with this tiny piece of wood. And he's like, nah, I'm a man. And then Stephen Miller, like, has he literally ever held a hammer in his life? Maybe to crush the skull of a small animal. But other than that, I don't think so. These are not traditionally masculine men. They don't have any of those characteristics or whatever. Whereas with like Tim Walz, people are like, they were going through like all these like classic examples, jokes of like being like a dad or whatever. And they were like, there's no way it's been more than a week since he strapped something down in like the bed of a pickup and said, that ain't going nowhere. Because that's the vibe that he has. Whereas all of the Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh, where's the masculinity in literally any of this? And that's why it just bothers him so much. And in particular, that it's not like a Joe Manchin style Democrat. Walz has all of that, the military stuff. He was the football coach. He did all that. He was also a teacher and yes, cares about people and tries to make the government help people. He cares and he's objectively more masculine than all of them put together. And that's what I love about it. Now, do we want to get to some weirder stuff? Because we have that too. We knew that the right was going to descend to some conspiratorial levels to take down Tim Walz. We're already there. I reminded everyone on the show yesterday of the right-wing conspiracy theory that the flag of Minnesota had been remodeled after Somalia's. That was debunked like 6 months ago, but they're still running with it already. Sean Hannity had a segment about him hating his own state's flag, so you shouldn't like Tim Walz or whatever. And then Elon Musk responded to some random person who pays $8 a month to the richest person in the world to be on Twitter to say that he turned his home state into Somalia. Now he wants to do the same to the country. And Elon Musk just goes, yes, that is very suspicious. And the evidence is compelling because Minnesota's flag, like Somalia's, has the color blue. And I think those are the only two flags that have that, and has a star. And I think those are the only two flags that have that. There are literally dozens and dozens. It's the most ridiculous, flaccid brain conspiracy theory I've ever heard. And of course, they jump in it. Greg Gutfeld called Tim Walz a male Karen with a pot belly. How is he a Karen? Again, they know what the stereotype of their side is, and they're just trying to turn around. And by the way, you want to talk about pot bellies? How's Trump doing with the bellies? By the way, Greg Gutfeld, let's take a look at your belly. What the hell are you talking about? Do you understand that when you're a twisted little goblin, you shouldn't be insulting people's appearance? Do you know that you immediately open yourself up to the same sort of criticism, Gutfeld? But anyway, I want to move on to, no, we're gonna get to that in a separate thing, I think. But again, it's conspiracy theories. It's insulting the fact that like Ben Shapiro said he lives in a van down by the river. Like their attack was that he reminds people of Chris Farley. What are you doing? Or did you get hacked or something? How is that your best attack against this guy? I don't understand it. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I miss Chris Farley. That's what that made me think of. I wish he was here to do a wonderful impression. And now you're attacking band people too. I watch a show, it's about band life. I don't know that I could live it, but they're good people too. These are Americans, so they're flailing. They're just throwing everything out there. And I don't even feel like, I used to feel like for so long, the Republicans were on and all call, this conference call every morning. Let's see what kind of damage we can do and let's all stay on message. The call has static. Several people have dropped off. They need to regroup and figure out what they're gonna do here. And I have full confidence that nothing's really gonna work, but they're gonna give it their best shot, so buckle up.
Yeah, well, maybe we should turn to what could be their best shot, an attack against Tim Walz that they really love. So the next graphic I'm gonna go to for the team is gonna be graphic 6, but I'm gonna jump into this. Perhaps the weirdest of the attacks that we've seen thus far against Tim Walz, the one that I think says so much more about the people spreading the attack than it does about the victim of the attack, is the attempt to make Tampon Tim happen. Now, this is ridiculous. You've probably seen it going around on like Twitter, 4chan, or other places online where Nazis and incels congregate. But here's Laura Loomer. They have this photo and it's been shared, I don't know, 100,000 people on Twitter or whatever. I hope Trump calls Governor Tim Walz Tampon Tim. And I start with her because she's what passes for the thought leader on the right these days. But Chai Reichik also spread it, and Stephen Miller said it. You'll notice there's a picture and there's a hashtag. There's no argument as to why are they calling him that or why is it supposed to be weird. So you might be wondering, because you're like a well-adjusted person, Did he do something with a tampon? Are tampons for him like futons are for JD Vance? What did he do to the tampon? No, there's nothing. This is what they're referencing. Last year, he signed a bill requiring Minnesota public schools to provide access to free menstrual products, including tampons, in bathrooms for kids in schools. That's it. By the way, like, I already thought every school had that. Growing up, that was in our schools. This is not new. It's not strange. It's not radical. So what is the idea here? That because he doesn't want girls to just free bleed in 6th grade, that he's strange? Most of the people that I cited there attacking him are women who think it's weird that he made these necessary and in some cases expensive, if you're having to buy them all the time, products freely available. I don't understand what the attack is supposed to be. They are just they're ungrounded right now. They don't know what they're supposed to do.
They don't, and it's giving me all kinds of ideas. I mean, when I heard this, like you, I didn't quite understand where they were going with it. I looked at the history of tampons. It goes back to ancient Egypt, by the way, okay? Very useful product. I remember being, let's say, in the 5th or 6th grade, and it's a very difficult time sometimes for a young lady who's trying to take care of her body and changes and needs to make sure she has everything, including her homework and her gym shoes and everything else. And so what this Governor Walz did was tremendous, and it was beautiful, and it was necessary. So now you're attacking everyone who perhaps needs a tampon, or perhaps the men who we send to the store to get them. So I keep bringing it on. If you want people holding up, a tampon at a rally, I guess it's not going to work. Get more creative, okay? Please make it stop.
I would hope that they would. Honestly, I think that this is projection because I was at the RNC. I saw them wearing maxi pads on their ears so that they could look more like Trump after he got boo-boo or whatever. You guys want to talk about weird stuff in schools? You guys want government paid workers who check kids' genitals to see if they can play field hockey. He made hygiene products freely available. You think we're the weird ones? Let's put it to a vote. We're going to actually in November. Let's put that to a vote. Such bizarre people. Okay, we're gonna take a short break. We come back, we're gonna get into one more attack against Walz, and that's that he's a representation of the Democrats' anti-Semitism or whatever. All that and more after this. Okay, let's see what's going on out there in the audience. Rubik's Realtor Dragon in the members' comment says this Walz pick is going to bring the quiet fire back. I disagree. People are not being quiet, they're being loud and excited. But other than that, I agree with you. Let's see, I want to give credit to Muad'Dib in the Twitch chat that said, in regard to the Walz burn, I can't believe we got 2 assassination attempts this cycle. Damn. Okay, Gabby Marita, hey Gabby, says, I for one am glad that the VP pick is basically old man Eric Taylor from Friday Night Lights, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. I have not seen that movie, show, I've heard of it, but I'm not super familiar with that. I know it's about football though, I do get that. Okay, Jay says, maybe JD Vance should drop out and become the ruler of the Ottoman Empire, dun-dun-dun. Preston Park says, Republicans are really, oh no, you're spreading conspiracy theories because you made a joke about him fucking a cushion or whatever. Again, it's just so ridiculous. Preston Park says, Republicans are really leaning on the Walz the radical angle. I guess Republicans think it's radical to care about people after they're born. Yeah, look, they're gonna call him a radical, and the evidence that they're gonna have is he doesn't hate refugees and he didn't crack down hard enough on uppity black people. That's the 2 attacks. I'm being nice in my characterization of how they're gonna talk about it. They were already gonna do that, by the way. There's literally no Democrat that they were gonna choose as a VP that they weren't gonna say is basically like Representative Omar's brother-in-law or whatever. The attacks were always gonna happen. But what you get with Walz is he can go through, as we did yesterday, a long line of awesome and wildly popular policies that he helped pass. Okay, Vance is sofa king the couch says Shapiro and Walsh are the kinds of dudes who call their neighbors to start their fire pit. I mean, if you just got it, I don't have a problem with that. Maybe you don't know how it works, but again, it's just Like, I don't know why it's not pointed out more. And I get it. Like, leftist guys have a lot of stuff that they're trying to advocate for. They don't necessarily want to make everything about masculinity or whatever. And they're generally not as obsessed with masculinity as right wingers are. But like, I've just always found it strange that they stress so much alpha males and all that, and they don't have any. Like, they have whiny, petulant little guys scream barking at a camera about how you're supposed to be John Wayne. That's never made sense to me. And sorry, Ben Shapiro, as a guy who, like, I make things, I do DIY, I build furniture and stuff like that. I hunted with my father, I've held a gun. Please come at me on masculinity, Ben Shapiro, and Stephen Miller especially. I would enjoy that. Anyway, Lynn Fallis says, JD Vance is starting to get a little, quote, I am not a witch vibe. Oh my God, I forgot about that. That was perhaps the only worse candidate rollout than him. Okay, Boomer Dragon Cat says in the members' comments, Tim Walz is the embodiment of the American heartland. I mean, again, it's like everybody says, he is what JD Vance wants you to believe he is. He is what Silicon Valley wants you to believe JD Vance is. Anyway, John Fox, thank you for gifting a membership. Very nice of you. And Bronco gifted 5 memberships. Thank you as well. Very nice of you. Okay, let's see. Mark Gauthier, member for 2 months, says GOP not able to figure out this ticket. I don't think they're ready for this jelly. Please have someone explain this musical reference to John. Okay, everybody, pump the brakes. I've listened to some music, okay? It's Hootie and the Blowfish. Everybody knows that. No, I'm kidding. I know that one. I've been to a Beyonce concert. Jeez. I haven't been to a lot of concerts, but I've been to a few. Okay, Moondragon says in Super Chat, better tampon Tim than maxi pad Don. He's gonna get anxious about that. Okay, everybody, as I said, let's get into this one more attack and then we're gonna move on to election results. There is this truly strange, seemingly coordinated campaign to convince you that for all the good stuff you've heard about Tim Walz, you should be mad that he was picked to be Harris's VP because he was only picked just for the Dems to demonstrate how wildly anti-Semitic they are. And so you have articles on Fox News talking about how social media explodes with the theory that Harris snubbed Shapiro to appease anti-Israel wing of Democrats. Are there people talking about that? Sure. The idea that this is organic or from the ground up is utterly ridiculous. That is totally not true. You see it, by the way, on the mainstream media, on CNN and MSNBC. Jake Tapper kept referencing the fact that Josh Shapiro was passed over and he was Jewish, as if the fact that one of the finalists being Jewish means that that's the only person that you can choose. Is JD Vance Jewish? I don't understand why like the Dems would be the only ones being attacked on this, except that I totally do. And the right is trying to score points on this. Although they're going a little bit over the top, and I think they end up looking like a herd of dumb donkeys. Take a look at a great example. Eric Erickson tweeted, "No Jews allowed at the top of the Democratic Party." And this might be my favorite community notes of all time, because it says the Senate Majority Leader, Secretaries of State, Treasury, Homeland Security, Attorney General, Director of National Intelligence, and the husband of the 2024 presidential nominee are all Jewish. I saw Chuck Schumer quote retweeted that with news to me. Like, what are you talking about? Meanwhile, on the Republican side, there's not even a Jewish senator. They don't even have. There's references to Jewish people, you know. You get a drink or two into Marjorie Greene and she'll tell you all sorts of things about Jewish people, but not actual representation. And so this just seems so ridiculous to me. Like, Shapiro was a good candidate in a variety of ways, and he very well could have been chosen. A lot of people thought it was more likely. Walz was also an incredibly strong candidate who had gone mega viral in the weeks leading up to the pick. So it's not like some strange snub. They went with a guy that tons of people were super excited to be picked. Trying to like weirdly score points on this to both sides anti-Semitism, I think should be below us. But what do you think?
Yeah, but it's right on message for them. I think it's just got to be ignored. I didn't even think they should play into it or respond to it. I do like Chuck Schumer's retweet, news to me, that says that's it. Okay, just leave it at that. Because again, the desperation is calling. Shapiro remains one of their favorite sons. He'll be out there on the campaign trail, and hopefully, Pennsylvania will fall in line, and democracy, as we know it, could be saved.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like the Democrats had a VP nominee previously who was Jewish have the Republicans?
Don't think about it. You drive yourself crazy.
Republicans say 99 times out of 100, why are you focused on these demographic characteristics? Why is that what you're focusing on? And then when they seemingly didn't do that, they're like, how dare you not focus on this? You have to, you must. The whole thing's ridiculous. But anyway, let's move on to a brief bit of good news before some bad news. Let's start with the good news, starting with this.
One down, many more to go. Every single citizen across the entire country needs to step it up.
I agree with Valentina Gomez in this one very limited instance. One down. And thankfully, it was her because she lost her election. We've been talking about Valentina Gomez for what feels like 10 years. I guess it's only been 6 months. She was running to be Secretary of State of Missouri, which seems ridiculous, particularly when she was running on a campaign of burning books and calling people gay. And so what do you know, she lost, which I am surprised by, and it gives me hope for the future. But much more important than the fact that she lost is how she lost and how much she lost, because boy, did she lose. Take a look at this. This is the results of the primary. Denny Hoskins wins. If you want to find her name, you're gonna have to look down a little bit because she came in 6th with 7.4% of the vote. And I just want to say to the Republicans of Missouri, for the first time in my life, thank you. Thank you for doing the right thing and not being won over by this. And look, I don't know about Denny Hoskins, I'm sure he's terrible or whatever. But she had all these ads and they were just so designed to appeal to like broken Republican men. Like, oh yeah, she's a conventionally attractive woman and she's calling people gay and stuff. Like, I love it. She's got guns and also a Prius. But anyway, I love it. It didn't work. And politics can be so depressing and demoralizing so much that we, I think, have an ethical obligation to acknowledge when one of their terrible candidates loses. When Herschel Walker loses, we don't forget about that for the rest of our life because he could have won. When Dr. Oz loses, we don't forget about it because he could have won. Fetterman won, and then that turned into a whole big thing of itself. But anyway, this is good news, and I like it. I'll remind everyone, if you weren't familiar, she in an ad told voters, "Don't be weak and gay." She told Black Americans to kindly leave the US if they don't like the country. In Missouri, that probably stands out less than the other stuff, considering the history of racism there. But she literally burned books with a flamethrower in a Twitter post, and she wanted to force TikTok users into military service because people who are too focused on just like short vertical viral videos are lazy and they're not contributing to America. Meanwhile, her entire campaign was short viral vertical videos. But anyway, it didn't work. She didn't win. It's good news. What do you think?
Yeah, sometimes there are a few occasions Missouri gets it right. I mean, Todd Aiken, okay. This is pot kettle, like you said, with her whole TikTok campaign that went nowhere. I think if she would have focused her hate in one direction instead of all directions, she perhaps could have gained more traction in this race in Missouri, but she chose to just lash out at everyone. And I think she needed to kind of pick her battles here, but I hope she does not regroup, lick her wounds and come back. She's better suited elsewhere.
Yeah, she very well could come back, and who knows? Yeah. Maybe she finds a super red district to run as like a congresswoman or whatever. But right now it looks like, yeah, run her again. Put a couple $1 million into it, waste it, tee up a victory. I mean, who knows if a Democrat will end up winning? It's still Missouri, but at least it wasn't her. And it's so strange. Like, I know this is what Lauren Boebert does, and this is what Marjorie Greene does, or whatever. It's a little bit more crazy, perhaps, than even them. But she was running for Secretary of State. What does any of this have to do with that? The burning of books and calling people "don't be weak and gay." That has nothing to do. I mean, it shouldn't have anything to do with our government, but unfortunately, it does. It certainly doesn't have anything to do with being Secretary of State. Anyway, we have to turn to the bad news. Let's jump into this.
Pulling me away from my position as Congresswoman. Because see, now I don't have to worry about some strings that I have attached, and as much as I love my job. But all they did was radicalize me, and so now they need to be afraid. AIPAC, I'm coming to tear your kingdom down.
So as I'm sure you're aware, one of the most passionate and fiery squad members, Cori Bush, lost her re-election primary. She was defeated by Wesley Bell. In the end, it was closer than some of the polls had indicated, perhaps an indication of the strength of the efforts of the squad to rally people to door knock and call and all that. She ended up losing by about 5.5 points, it looks like. So definitely a competitive race. And as she alluded to with the reference to AIPAC at the end, one would have to wonder, what if we had an election system in America where an organization couldn't come into a congressional primary and drop literally millions and millions of dollars? What result would we have had? We might have had the people just choose, but we don't have that. Instead, AIPAC did come in and they spent more than $8 million. And I know, look, if you haven't been following politics for a long time, or even if you have, you know that there's a lot of money in our politics or whatever, but I just want to be very clear. In a Democratic primary, $8 million for one super PAC to spend is a wild amount of money. It still is. There's tons of money, but that is truly deranged. And yet they did it. Now, obviously, they helped to defeat Jamal Bowman, again, with a massive influx of money. And that is what AIPAC is doing. They've got about $100 million that they are spending to destroy progressives. That's what it's designed to do. Bothers me deeply that there are Democrats who are winning their races thanks to this. And we're just supposed to be cool with that. They don't even have to talk about the fact that they're benefiting to the tune of millions of dollars and coasting to victory without having to really campaign. The entire thing is super distressing. I know people are bringing up similar thing with Nina Turner, and there's been other primaries as well. And so she's saying that she's going to try to fight back. I don't know exactly what form that comes in, and it is certainly possible that she could run for office again, perhaps at a different level, perhaps challenging Wesley Bell if he is to win. But just this is what so many people hate about politics, that the rich, either individually or organizations, can just effectively decide for us who is going to win. What do you think?
Particularly when you're talking about someone like Cori Bush, who is a nurse, who really rose to public service in the wake of Ferguson and the death of Michael Brown, the killing of him, and that grassroots, that real energy that was behind her. And so you're right, it hurts because it feels like what little power we had, the people, it's dwindling because of big money coming in. Forget about the door knocks and the traditional pounding the pavement and speaking ideas to your neighbors. It's a wrap, it seems, and it's sad that nothing can be done about it. And you're right about Senator Turner, of course, Bowman in New York. It makes me really uncomfortable that the Democratic Party members of it either turned a blind eye or in some cases worse.
Yeah, and how many times have we heard over the last 6 years when a progressive will challenge a Democrat in a primary, like, stand by our incumbents, how dare you try to take one of them down? Meanwhile, millions of dollars being spent. Oh, I don't know. I got really into the Bear season 3, and I want to focus on what you're doing here. They should be criticized way more. They should be facing way more pressure. I mean, you have an organization like AIPAC, not exclusively, but a lot of Republican money. And Republicans get to decide what Democrats we have. They get to come into a blue district where they would not be able to win by running a Republican, and they just get to give us worse Democrats. And by the way, you could have enough pressure that like a Wesley Bell or whatever would have to denounce this spending, refuse to accept the money, denounce it at every turn. And that pressure could come from regular people, it could also come from the Democratic Party. But they're just not providing that pressure because they don't want progressives. They don't want members of the squad. They certainly don't want Cori Bush. And so they should be facing way more pressure. I mean, I know we're there's a brief period where hey, Nancy Pelosi was encouraging Biden to step down or whatever. But those establishment Democrats, there are other things they should be working on, and they are allowing this to happen. But I just want to remind everyone of why this matters and why a lot of people had a lot of affection for Cori Bush. We're going to end by reminding everyone of one of her most powerful moments as a congresswoman. Take a look at this.
This is our way of saying, hey, House leadership, reconvene us like we're still here. Do something. We can't take vacation right now. I'm dirty, I'm sticky, I'm sweaty, I still have on what I had on last night. This is how people will have to live if we don't do something. 7 million people, 6 million, 11 million, how many ever it is, they deserve their human dignity, and they deserve for the people that are paid to represent them to show up and do the work to make sure that they have their basic needs met today.
So when America was in crisis, the greatest domestic crisis of living memory, and so many people were facing just being thrown out on the streets in the middle of a public health crisis, the vast majority of our elected officials were spending all of their time just trying to make sure that they played the stock market and made as much money off it as possible. And then you had someone like Cori Bush who's like, people are gonna suffer. And not just Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley was also involved in it. She hasn't lost a re-election, that's why we're focusing on Cori Bush. Fought to make sure that there would be a moratorium on evictions, that regular people who were suffering the most would be protected. And she was demonized for that. I mean, thankfully she did it and we got that moratorium, at least for a time. But like, you have a scant handful of elected officials that actually give a damn about people. And they are the ones that the big money comes for, and they take them out. They take them out because they rock the boat, they challenge the status quo. And also, I think symbolically, they don't want us to have hope. They want like, to whatever extent voters think that like, someone could potentially fight for them, they want it to come in the form of like a JD Vance, where he's just like, yeah, I was poor once and I'm a populist. And then you do literally nothing except fast tax cuts for the wealthy. They want people to see that and to check out of politics. They don't want people to see a Bush or a Presley or an AOC. They don't want them to see that and get motivated to elect more actual representatives. And so we'll see what her next steps are. I would love to have her on the show to talk about that. But any final thoughts, Sharon?
Well, you're right. It's a warning shot. It's a lesson to others. Don't you dare. Here's what we got waiting on you. And it's not just that, this large money pack was able to prop up, I guess, a Democrat, wink, wink, but this person's now beholden. They're beholden, and so will the next one. So it's a real problem here. And again, huge disappointment. And I do hope you get that interview with Cori Bush because she was grassroots, and it's a sad day.
It is. Okay, we're gonna take a couple minutes, short break, come back. We have one more story for you. And then you're just reminded that like the vast majority of Congress is just dude who went to law school, had a business, raised a bunch of money, got into Congress. You literally never heard from them. They did nothing. No protests, no bills, nothing. They tried to name a post office after Stephen Miller or something. And then they get reelected for 6 cycles or something. That's what Congress generally is. We occasionally have a glimpse at what it could be. Anyway, okay, let's see. Homemaker Hobbit says in Super Chat, these people think tampons punch your V card. Jesus, I don't know. I do know that a lot of them have no knowledge whatsoever about the things they try to regulate or limit. I know that. Chris Huggy saying we need to have Walz on the show. I love that idea. We'll certainly try. That's gonna be difficult, I assume, but we'll try. Janet, aka Gemstar Dragon, member for 40 months, says, John, it's actually Tampon Don because he stopped the red wave in 2020. Yes, I've seen that sort of thing going around, and we'll see if he does this next time too. Pitchforks Dragon says in Super Chat, here's some dark humor for Tim Walz. Tampons are important to have in schools. They can plug bullet wounds. Gee. Tatted Reaperist says they're just butthurt because a parody account for Walz posted the. Wait, was that a parody? Was it? I thought that was his official account. No, that was a parody account, actually. I should probably leave a note on that. It seemed totally in line with the sorts of jokes he was making. And by the way, I don't think that joke went, over the line or whatever. Lots of people had made references to Mike Pence, potentially being hung, but that one actually, that got me, okay? And so I'm gonna have to be more on the lookout or whatever. Anyway, thank you, Tatted Reapers, for pointing that out. Rachel A, member for 5 months, says, hi, John. Hi, Rachel. How's it going? Okay, Dragoon Dragon, member for 18 months, says, I'm a teacher librarian at my small, very rural K-12 school. We teachers keep pads/tampons at our desks to give out to students. Wish we had Walz. Yes, a lot do. My wife's family is filled with teachers, and I help them to do their fundraising. We just did a round of it, actually. They have to buy literally everything. Honestly, like I'm glad that Walz focused on providing these, but any additional funding would be great, actually. Okay, Jonah Morton, member for 22 months, says, to be fair, in 1996 congressional race, the FL-CIO spent $1 billion to elect 3 congresspeople, $8 million for one race to spend less later. I am going to have to look into that. I don't know what reference that is to 3 congressional seats. I would be very surprised, but we should look that up. Trisha Briggs, it's before the time that I was doing the news, but I still would be interested to know. Trisha Briggs, member for 14 months, says, these poor right-wingers, they're literally nothing more satisfying to watch. I'm loving this Harris Walz ticket. Me too. I want to see them start doing some interviews, more media appearances, more rallies. I want that to be a constant refrain. And bear in mind, not only is like the polling moving against Donald Trump and the fundraising and everything, I want to remind everyone that he is maintaining a very low T campaign schedule. The dude is golfing like every day. Like he theoretically could travel a lot and turn things around, but he's not really trying. Which is why I think, rather than referring to them as like Trump Vance, it should be Vance and his lazy boy. I think that is how we should refer to them, because Donald Trump is basically just sitting this thing out. Dave Velasquez, member for 36 months, says they are attacking Walz for his DUI and saying that he lied to the police 30 years ago, but Walz said he went sober after that and hasn't touched alcohol since. Sure, look, he had the DUI. It's something that you can criticize him for. He seems to have taken responsibility after that and made a lifelong change. I think that potentially could be a positive thing, but we do have to acknowledge it. It is a downside. I think that's fair to point out. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, everybody, if you're just joining us now, hit that like button. We're gonna jump into one more story to close out the first hour. The FBI has apparently executed a search warrant on another congressperson. It's becoming like a constant, but this one stands out because Tennessee Republican Representative Andy Ogles is accused of a lot of stuff. Most important, most serious is alleged fraudulent campaign finance reports, and we're gonna get into the details of that. Big sums of money that apparently were not classified correctly. But that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg, because more and more details are coming out about this guy, and it's making him seem a little bit like George Santos 2.0, but we're gonna evaluate the evidence and see what we think. So FBI searches began reporting last year about discrepancies in his financial disclosures, including a $320,000 personal loan that he allegedly gave his campaign. He finally admitted that the loan was not real back in May, amending his disclosure forms to confirm he only transferred $20,000 to his campaign. The $320,000 figure was included on his disclosure forms as a mistake. I love that, as a mistake. What's the mistake? Your pen slipped and you wrote in a 3? What does that mean? It kind of seems like it being found was the mistake, but again, I don't want to get ahead of the allegations. Earlier this year, watchdog group Campaign Legal Center filed a complaint against Ogles with the Office of Congressional Ethics, accusing the congressman of failing to, quote, properly disclose his financial interests and claiming that his financial disclosures, quote, include over $1 million in financial discrepancies. So there are a lot of big figures being thrown around, but we're gonna have to get into the investigation. There appears to have been some stuff going on. And that same ethics committee complaint compared him to George Santos for reasons that we're gonna get into. So aside from just the money stuff, he apparently embellished his resume ahead of the 2022 midterm elections, shades of George Santos. In particular, he doesn't have a degree or formal training as an economist, although he claims to. So he has called himself an economist. He took only one community college economics course, which he apparently barely passed. It wasn't like he aced this one course and he was like, I got this, I don't need any more. He barely passed it. It's a thing that like he kind of took. It's like everybody who went to college, you take like your gen eds the first year or whatever. Are you now an expert in all of those things? But that's what he was claiming. He also claimed to have majored in international relations. That's not true, he didn't do that. He's also questioned for having been involved in international sex trafficking while having served as a volunteer reserve deputy, because you can't have a scandal-prone Republican without something weird sexual going on. And so these are very serious allegations. The sex trafficking, the money, the other stuff with the resume, that's lying that we're now finding out apparently people just routinely do when they run for office, which means that the media needs to check these people. But his electronic devices were confiscated. And we don't know whether there's gonna be an indictment, although it's looking like it might move in that direction. And so he's looking bad. He looks like it's one thing if you have the financial disclosure issue. You try to write it off as just being a mistake. But when we now have this documented track record of you routinely lying, it becomes a little bit harder to believe that it was just an innocent mistake. What do you think?
I think somebody's in trouble. And I would say call Santos to see how it works out for him, but we know how that ends. Although he's doing quite well on, what is it? Those
Cameo?
sites where OnlyFans, and then he's on the other one too. So maybe that's his future, but this is not looking good. And I think we have to take another, not just look at the money that's spent on these campaigns, but look at some of the people who are running as they submit their paperwork, on the front end, the people who are supposed to protect us, watch after us. This is a problem.
Yeah, people have been talking about whether we need to set up some sort of like mental fitness or cognitive fitness exam for our elected officials. I think we should have like a mandated transcript sort of review, because man, do they love lying about their education and everything. And by the way, if you just went to like community college, that's totally fine or whatever. But it's trying to take like a brief experience and make it out that that's your expertise. So I guess you're judging by that, like anybody want to learn calculus? I'm a master of it or something because I took a course. Again, this is ridiculous. But to be fair, we're to end with a statement from the congressman. He said, "It has been widely reported for months that my campaign made mistakes in our initial financial filings. We have worked diligently with attorneys and reporting experts to correct the errors and ensure compliance going forward. Last Friday, the FBI took possession of my cell phone. It is my understanding that they are investigating the same well-known facts surrounding these filings. I will, of course, fully cooperate with them, just as I have with the FEC. I am confident all involved will conclude that the reporting discrepancies were based on honest mistakes and nothing more." That could happen, especially when it comes to like financial disclosures. The government generally, I think, goes pretty easy on them. Like, look at the Stock Act. Like, that's the limited requirements we have for disclosure for a lot of what they do and raise and the money they make on the stock market. And he could be right that that's the only reason they're doing this new seizure. He could also be wrong. They could be looking for evidence into some of these other things. We're gonna look into them more. I'm not intimately aware of all that he's been alleged to have done, but it might end up being worse than it seems. But we'll see, we'll see. If in the end he does have to step down though, I would say, look, we're never gonna get lying totally out of our politics. Politicians routinely lie, that's how they work. But we should at least know when they're running, who they are and what they've done. I don't think that that is a high bar to set. We get to know where you went to school. We get to know what work you did. We get to know what you've advocated for. That's how a democracy works. We have to punish a few of them, perhaps quite harshly, so that those running in the future don't think that they can just wildly lie and get one over on the American people. Okay, that's unfortunately all the time we have for the first hour of the show. I want to thank everyone who's been watching live and those who are listening to the podcast. If you are listening to the podcast, I would love it if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Super helpful for the show. I read every one of those reviews. I know it takes a minute, but I'm gonna read it, so that's fun. Go read it. You go write it right now. I'll read it during the break. That said, there's a lot more to come in the aftermath, including some fun. We're gonna try to figure out what Kamabla is after this. Welcome back to the Aftermath, one and all. Thank you for being here. We're gonna read a few of your comments, then jump into our stories. We got a fun one to start it off. Starshine Dragon's song, love the name, says in the members' comments, exactly, John. They want our spirit broken. They don't want us to believe anything can change for the better. And just generally, they just don't. They especially like they don't want the left or Democrats to be happy. Like it makes them so angry that Democrats are happy these days. And then on their side, there's just no joy. It's just anger. We have a clip we're gonna show you tomorrow on the show of JD Vance being asked about what makes him happy or what makes him laugh. And his response is just so damning. Anyway, Galfar says, hey John, we hit 4,100 members over in the 2IT official Discord during the main show last night. Can we hit 4,150 or maybe even 4,200 during TDR today? And then added a link to the Discord. So everybody may not know that there is an official TYT Discord. But although I could sell it, why don't we crowdsource the selling a little bit? So if you're on Twitch or if you're on YouTube, give a reason why the TYT Discord is awesome and people should be a part of the community. Let's fill the chat with that. Okay, with that said, let's jump into a little bit of fun. We're gonna do a little bit of investigation to figure out Kamabla.
Donald Trump has been referring to Harris on social media as Kamabla, I guess is how you pronounce it. It's 5 posts on Monday. Do you know where that came from and what that nickname means?
I can't comment on that, but I do know that when voters are making a decision, they're going to end up voting in many ways their pocketbook.
That's not what you were asked about, Doug Burgum. You were asked about Kamabla. How come you don't want to talk about Kamabla? You were going to be that guy's VP, and he can't go 5 minutes without talking about Kamabla. So why are you changing the subject? But I love what Doug Burgum does there, because he's asked to respond to a bizarre thing that Trump is doing. And he goes with, well, at the end of the day, what people really want to hear about is blankety blank. And I love that because we had the same thing a couple days ago with Byron Donalds, where he was asked about and suddenly Kamala became black. And he's like, well, you know what? That's not what people want to focus on. How many times can you do that about what your dude is saying before it becomes clear that he's not talking about what people want to talk about? Because that is what he's talking about. It doesn't seem like that's what regular people are concerned with, and yet he puts all of his attention into it. And because he is doing it so much, and since Caitlin Collins asked Doug Burgum that question, he's filled Truth Social with even more bleats. We'll show you a little mashup of all of the Kamablas. That it's just over and over and over again. I don't think he's putting Kamabla into bleats. I think he's writing bleats so he can say Kamabla at this point. And we're gonna figure out what it's all about. Now, I will say this is not the only attempted nickname he's had for her recently. He mispronounces her name, we know that, but also he tried to get Kamala Crash going yesterday. And I think they thought that was going to take off. They even decided to put it in one of the rallies that JD Vance did, but you can see how that went in the screenshot. It just ends up looking like he's doing a booster rally for Kamala Harris. Like, what an idiot. Have people duck down, you moron. They don't know how to run a campaign. But anyway, nicknames are like a very characteristic thing of Trump. He loves giving people nicknames. They tend to be very cruel. I want to give you what Thomas Gift, a political scientist, has to say about the nicknames. He says, Trump's demeaning language is something that many voters purport not to like, yet it's hard to say they don't pack a punch. At the same time, Kamabla and Kamala Crash don't quite have the same ring to them. Trump's difficulty in smearing Kamala Harris with a nickname is a lot like his campaign at the moment. It's throwing things at the wall, but nothing seems to be sticking. And I agree. Look, I think partly she's a more difficult person to attack. He can't attack her without revealing the deep level of hatred that he has for people of color and women. But also I think his brain isn't where it was at 4 years ago. And his level of energy isn't where it's at. He's more doddering, he's lower energy, lower testosterone than he used to be. Maybe he could have come up with a great cutting nickname for her before, but he just doesn't have it. And so for now, we have Kamabla. What do you think of it?
It's stupid, and you're right. He's not the same guy he was in his apprentice days or in 2016. Low energy, Jeb, Bush, whatever it is, little Marco. It's just, he, as evil as he is, he did have a knack for boiling things down to something, even if it wasn't true, and making it stick. Now, not so much, but I think she's the real problem of why he can't settle on something, because she is the height of unbothered, as Unfortunately, many women in politics have to be. She's not just pretending to smile through it. She thinks he's a nincompoop, and she's not reacting to it, okay? That's about the second time I've used that in 2 weeks, but the times call for it. That's how she sees him, as if he's, her 6-year-old nephew who's come over and he has a smart mouth, and she knows he's going home soon. So she's not gonna bother with this. She's bless your heart and move on, okay? This is what we're having for dinner.
Yeah, I do pick up a little bit of that. And by the way, to the content of it, like there's a couple different ways you can go with Kamabla. Some people are saying he just wants blah, like she's boring.
Blah.
But like that doesn't make sense as an insult. The reason you're freaking out is because she's wildly popular right now. Like, so what are you talking about? She's boring. Like people objectively are not bored. I know that you like to will things into existence, but that's just not what's going on. Other people think that the blah is supposed to be for black. He's just trying to like reference that or something. And I know that seems silly. It makes him look like a nincompoop, but I will remind everyone via this tweet by Jay Nordlinger, during the primaries, he called Nikki Haley Nimbra. Her name was her given name was Nimarata. He called her Nimbra. Now it's Kamabla. Like, I'm not saying it has to be for black, but I think there's very clearly a racist element to it. It's a thing of your names don't mean anything. They're silly and who could remember them? They're just ridiculous names. So we get to make fun of them because you're the other and we're gonna make you feel bad. That's what it's about. It's a through line of the campaign. You can see it when his like official spokesperson tweets things like, under the Kamala Walz ticket, Ilhan Omar will be considered for a cabinet position like Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense. That's obviously not based on any reporting, and there's no way that that's gonna happen. But wouldn't it be scary if the black woman were in charge of the military? No. Sorry, I was cosplaying a regular right winger there. That's the feel of their campaign. And okay, if you think that's gonna win things for you, feel free. That said, I wanna turn to a little bit more of the freak out, starting with this.
Trump keeps posting about Joe Biden. And today he's saying that Biden's gonna come in and crash the Democratic convention maybe and try to take the nomination back and run again. I mean, does he realize that he's running against Vice President Harris, not Joe Biden anymore, moving on, that he does have a different, maybe more formidable opponent in her?
Well, I think he knows exactly who he's running against.
I agree. I think he does know exactly who he's running against. He knows that it's Kamala Harris and he doesn't want it to be. I was leading, I was winning, I want to win again. Come on, I was having a good time. And then you had to ruin everything by stepping down Sleepy Joe and putting her in. I don't like it. And we know that right wingers do not deal well with inconvenient facts, inconvenient truths. Their feelings trump the facts every time. And so you get this tweet. I'm gonna put the tweet that Caitlin Collins was talking about right there. What are the chances that crooked Joe Biden, the worst president of the United States, whose presidency was stolen by Kamabla, Barack spelled incorrectly, Hussein Obama, and a whole bunch of other people, crashes the Democratic National Convention and tries to take back the nomination, beginning with challenging me to another debate? He feels like he's asking a question. How likely is it? Now he just gets into fan fiction. He feels that he made a historically tragic mistake by handing over the US presidency, a coup, to the people in the capital W world he most hates, and he wants it back now. None of that is true. None of that is based on anything. He just desperately wants it to. He wants it so bad. And I guess he was never trained to create like a formal vision board, or maybe just doesn't have the visual creativity for that. And so he just bleats the things he wishes were true. And it comes off looking so sad and desperate, Sharon.
Yeah, it's true, it's fantasy, but I also think it goes a little bit deeper. He is trying to manipulate like an adult does a child sometimes. He thinks he's transmitting some kind of waves or signals to Joe Biden that this is how you should feel, and believing that Joe Biden has a low emotional quotient, that he will somehow take this on and create chaos and say, give me back my nomination. I honestly believe it's not just fantasy. He thinks by putting it out there, he can get in Joe Biden's head and he can at least, there's a chance that this could happen.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
That's true. So I think, yeah, that's possible. It could be projection for him to feel better, but also remember, like the right has dwelled in a safe space, a bubble, more durable than any other community over the last couple of decades. Like they will literally believe anything if it makes them feel good. So he might just be creating a convenient fantasy for them so that they can feel a little bit more comfortable because they're seeing the polls. They know this thing isn't looking nearly as certain as it was. So maybe he's just trying to make them feel better. But I do like that some people are getting in little hits. So we're gonna end with this. Adam Schiff quote retweeted that bleat, says it's okay to be scared. Gavin Newsom says, oh, he's scared. No, he's totally scared. Like you thought like he was scared when they nicked him a little bit, like in the shooting or whatever. No, he's scared now. Now he is very worried about what this means for him because there are not just political consequences for this. There's potentially legal consequences if he loses this thing. So he's definitely running scared. Okay, with that said, in a moment, we're gonna move into another story. Okay, let's see. Oh, you know what? I haven't read much from Twitch. So I'm gonna jump to Twitch. Bookworm Dragon's been here for 50 months. That's amazing, Bookworm Dragon. Thank you. Self-Aware Skynet's been here for 41 months. Says coaches, not couches. Let's go, Harris Walls. Thank you. Chipmunk PDX been here for 42 months. Says yeah, 42. Does this month mean I have the answer to everything? Just start spitting facts and we'll see. Okay, C Prince Reborn Dragon's been here for 25 months. Says I'm super happy to be using this versary on a day with some actual measurable good news. I was hoping they'd pick the right guy and they did. Let's go. They did. By the way, I don't know if it's true. I'll just choose to believe it. On Threads, someone back in 2018 had tweeted, here's a prospective ticket, Walz/Harris or Harris/Walz. This is before Joe Biden had won or whatever. No, I don't think anyone else had predicted that. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, with that said, let's move from happiness to this. A number of black employees of an asphalt paving systems company in Florida were apparently repeatedly called incredibly graphic racial slurs and also treated as literal second-class citizens at the places they were working. And now the paving company is gonna have to pay them $1.2 million. That's how bad the persistent racism was. So during their employment at Asphalt Paving Systems, the men were allegedly called racial slurs, threatened and intimidated, as well as denied, quote, the use of facilities, tools, and resources on the basis of their race. And it's very clear, so stay tuned for that. But on the slurs, the plaintiffs were called the N-word and boy numerous times by white managers and coworkers. They were forced to work in inclement weather, including heavy rain, while white workers looked on. And they were forced to use the bathroom outdoors while white workers could use indoor facilities. And look, there's a lot of very explicit racism here, but I can't imagine like a more obvious case of racism than one worker gets to use the bathroom and the other has to go into the woods. I mean, I am going to treat one of you like a human and the others are going to be treated like animals. And they were apparently doing this. This is not a random one-off thing. This isn't low-level employees. This is the system that they had. And I want to give you some specific examples of the racism. So these include two white foremen, Anthony Buchholz and Douglas Henry. So Buchholz apparently would use the N-word frequently in front of Broderick Kearney and other employees. Kearney objected to his use of the N-word, but Buchholz continued to use it. After Kearney's objections, Buchholz then came to a job site with a friend and yelled, "I ain't gonna ever run from a black N-word," at Kearney, the worker. So when the black worker who had been repeatedly called the N-word at this point just pointed out like, hey, maybe you could stop using literally the worst racial slur that we have in this country, he then doubled down with a little bit of implied threat of potential violence. So there's more, there's calling him boy and black boy and monkey and black mother effer and all of this. This feels like they were speed running to a racism lawsuit, but maybe they just thought that in America and in particular maybe in Georgia, or sorry, in Florida in this case, that they would be protected. And I kind of understand why they think they'd be able to get away with this, but what do you think, Sharon?
Yeah, in America before MAGA and the whole movement, of course, but now it's given people who are prone to this kind of thing or enjoy this kind of bigotry, racism, the ability to say the quiet part out loud even more. Like, what are you gonna do about it? And in many cases, I mean, they're in Florida. They're not gonna do anything about it. So sure, I can see why they felt protected in their actions and empowered even.
Yeah, empowered to do it, thinking that there would be no consequences. $1.25 million, it's kind of a consequence. One employee, I'm gonna give you a few more details. One employee referred to as Jackie allegedly told black employees, quote, "Black is beautiful, tan is grand, but white is the color of the big boss man. As well as noting that he was, quote, black from the waist down. So, there's like racism on the job, and then there's just you being the worst, literally the worst person, just having to work near you. You deserve compensation in the millions, I think. They were also accused, apparently, of preventing the men from finding future employment. They apparently contacted potential employers and asked them not to hire them. So it wasn't enough that they ruined their own workplace. They tried to make sure that they wouldn't be able to work in the future. So due to that environment, all the plaintiffs either resigned or were fired by March of 2022, and 15 plaintiffs are gonna split the money. So it's not a massive individual payday for any of the individuals who dealt with this. Hopefully they're able to find work in their chosen profession, but it is good to see a little bit of consequences. I would love to see a normalization of this. And by the way, we're gonna be talking about Elon Musk a little bit later on. There's accusations of racist work environments at some of those corporations as well. So I don't want to give people like the impression that it's just like contractors in Florida that are having to deal with this. No, it's in Silicon Valley as well. The people working on rockets are also maintaining these sorts of racist work environments. Any final thoughts, Sharon, before we move on?
No, I mean, I just think that's an important point too. We know about some things that have happened at Elon's places, like you said, and it's not just the small company. I think I would have liked the money award to be even higher because, like you said, 15 splitting it. But for a smaller company, that's a great deal of money, and that's a game changer, and just has to happen. Okay, we can't make you stop being ugly like this, but we can show you better than we can tell you why you should stop.
100%. Yeah, just I wish we had like a pile of stories like this that we could just reference when someone claims that like America has moved past racism. Like when you hear that, it fills you with rage because you know that there are millions of examples of that being ridiculous. But I would like to have a pile of the evidence. Maybe we can work on that. Anyway, with that said, I'm gonna read a comment or two and then we're gonna get into our last story. Double O, tier 3 member for 43 months says, hey John, did you know that milk is the fastest liquid in the universe? Before you even see it, it's already past your eyes. Is that a Tim Walz joke? Is that where you got that? No, I'm kidding. Good joke, Double O. Hope you, Sharon, and the whole 2IT fam have utterly and spectacularly delightful days ahead of you. Thank you. I hope that you do as well. Thank you to Dragon Dancer, who's been here for 43 months as well. And Yanin Foolery, who's been here for 43 months, says, I'm late, but I'm here. What's up, Dragon Squad? Thank you for being here. Okay, let's cap off the show with this. Elon Musk, who would love for you to believe that he's a huge fan of freedom and especially free speech, has started suing a group of advertisers on the basis of their violating antitrust laws through their boycott of X. So in effect, they stopped advertising on Twitter, which Elon Musk had bought and ruined and made it so that like reputable companies don't want their ads to be there. And he wants them to have to pay up. They're basically obligated to advertise there. Now, in effect, although this lawsuit is still ridiculous, it's not quite as ridiculous as it might seem because what he is trying to say is it's not that they didn't advertise, it's that they coordinated, which they're not allowed to do. That's under antitrust law, you can't do that. But it's still a ridiculous lawsuit for reasons that we're gonna point out. So he filed the lawsuit in Texas to get the best possible chance for reasons that should be obvious of it working. Says that after Musk took over the platform in 2022, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media persuaded top brands not to advertise on Twitter in an effort to, quote, collectively withhold billions of dollars in advertising revenue from the platform. So he then weighed in on Twitter saying, I strongly encourage any company who has been systematically boycotted by advertisers to file a lawsuit. There may also be criminal liability via the RICO Act, which is just ridiculous. So it's one thing for him to be like, you guys coordinated and you didn't give me your money. Now he's saying, any company who's been systematically boycotted should fight against. So what makes it systematically? What makes it a violation of antitrust law? He just wants a ton of garbage lawsuits. That's what he wants. By the way, the right wing, Bud Light, Target, those are systematic boycotts. Would you like to get some involvement in there? Organizations help to coordinate that, by the way. Would you like to open the door for that? Anyway, the reason that they stopped advertising could not be more obvious. And by the way, it's happened on other platforms too. YouTube had Adpocalypse. There was like one ad that was placed on a video that like sexualized children eight years ago or something, and advertising revenue dropped like 90%. day over day or something. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was insane. It was called Adpocalypse. And so what he did is he took control of Twitter. He brought back a ton of wild racists and misogynists and homophobes and transphobes and anti-Semites. He helped to boost them in the algorithm. He destroyed any faith that anyone has in the verification system on purpose. And now the site is filled up with bots and bot networks and racism and Nazi behavior. And so if you're like Jack in the Box, why would you want to advertise on that? It's the most reasonable thing ever to pull your ads. And I will also remind everyone, and maybe this will come up in the lawsuit. So he's claiming that it's like absurd that they wouldn't want to advertise. Remember what he said when some of them weren't advertising?
I hope they stop. You hope, don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's gonna try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go f yourself.
But
go f yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel. Don't advertise.
How do you think then about the economics of X? If part of the underlying model, at least today, and maybe it needs to shift, maybe the answer is it needs to shift away from advertising. If you believe that this is the one part of your business where you will be beholden to those who have this view, what do you do?
F-Y.
I understand that, but there's a reality too.
Yeah, so look, obviously that's like incredibly cringy and uncomfortable. And like he's so desperate to look tough or have the audience clap, and everyone's just really uncomfortable because he can't read an audience. He doesn't know what tough is. He's just a twitchy, weird guy who's desperate for admiration, but he's telling advertisers, don't advertise, okay? That seems important, I think, for this lawsuit, but Sharon, what are your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things. That was stupid, and that's Exhibit A, that should maybe play that first and then play it again at the end of the trial. I'm not an attorney, but that's what I would do. But the other part of it is it collusion if we all come to, as you laid it out so beautifully, the same reasonable conclusion, okay? Is that collusion if you have all kinds of things that are against our advertising Bible and we don't want to be associated with you? Okay, maybe they did get on a party line and kind of comment after the fact, but this is kind of silly. And if he doesn't care, I don't know why he's going through with this. He has Don Lemon suing him. Can he focus on that?
I know, like you would think with his many companies, he has enough stuff to do, but the dude, he was suing Media Matters. Like this guy, he wants to control what people say. That's why he buys the platform. He wants to have more control. Nobody hates free speech more than Elon Musk. Anyway, we'll see what happens to the lawsuit. That remains to be seen. Okay, Sharon, thank you as always for being here. Big News Wednesday would not be the same without you. Thank you.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. And I will be joining the first hour of the Young Turks later on today with Francesca Fiorentini. It's gonna be us two. The cat's away and now the mice will play. We're gonna have a lot of fun. So definitely tune in for that. For now though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. We'll see you soon.